Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Women, huh?
Yeah, no shit.
No, that pretty much says it all.
Yeah.
One of these days they're gonna save a little time and just stick that in the dictionary, you know? Just the word, no definition necessary, and any guy who stumbles across it will just roll his eyes and know what the hell it means. Women.
Totally.
From New York, this is Theater Talk. I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
And I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
Neil LaBute's new play, Reasons to be Pretty, has been nominated for a Tony Award. It stars a terrific actor named Tom Sadowski, who has also been nominated for the Tony. Welcome to Theater Talk, Tom.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations on the nomination.
Thank you very much.
And it has been superbly directed by a good friend of mine, Terry Kinney, one of the founders of the Steppenwolf Theater Company. And Terry and I had a kind of little exchange about the play during previews, which is how we bonded, correct?
That was, yes, it's ancient history now.
That's right. Welcome to Theater Talk, Terry.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let's just put this in context for the viewers. I wrote an article during the play when it was in previews, and at the time there were a couple shows on Broadway experimenting by dropping an intermission. And you, I think for a couple of performances, did away with the intermission. One performance, yeah. And I wrote sort of a, I suppose you could say a kind of snarky article about that. And you came right back at me with a phone message, really sort of tearing me apart. What was your objection, sort of in a larger scheme, of the press kind of following a play this closely in previews and perhaps suggesting it may be in trouble?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was the suggestion that it may be in trouble that troubled me the most. What we were doing was something we'd always planned to do during previews, although we were going to do it in a much slower way, like a four-step way, where we eliminated some of the monologues. We eliminated the monologues for a night, then we made a decision, etc. But the producers asked me to do it all at once, and they asked me to try it without an intermission. I never intended to cut the intermission. So while that was going on, I was also filming a television show that I'm on, and it became a time crunch, so they canceled the Sunday preview. They weren't selling that great at that point, so it wasn't a real problem. It was all just a work-a-day kind of environment for us, and then all of a sudden there seemed to be some sort of
buzz created by the Post that the show's in trouble.
I had a problem with that because I felt like it was premature, and we were very happy. We were happily working toward what we were going to end up with, and we knew we couldn't find it unless we found it in front of people. What they responded to, what they didn't respond to.
You know, back in the old days, Tom, way before you were on the scene, they used to take shows out of town to fix them out of town. Now, because of budgetary reasons, you really can't do that. Do you think that is somewhat of a detriment to how you put together a play if you've got to work all the kinks out in previews in New York with the press looking at you all the time?
Is it a detriment? I don't know. I mean, I suppose maybe the old way was there are definitely benefits to it, but it's art, you know, and we're constantly creating. I think that you have to understand as a preview a preview audience member, that, you know, you're going in and you're seeing art in progress, and that's kind of the exciting part of it. Like when I go to see previews, when I see my friends in shows, I mean, that's the excitement for me, that I'm seeing this art still being developed literally right in front of my eyes.
It never stopped me with out-of-town tryouts, which we did with Grapes of Wrath, for instance. We did the show in La Jolla, then moved to London, then came to New York. I mean, we had plenty of time to put together the show we wanted, but when we got to New York, we were in a certain room, there was a certain feeling to it, the audience was different, and we started tweaking. When you stop tweaking, that's like a sleeping shark.
Yes, when you say it's art, usually that term kind of puts me off, but in the case of Reasons to be Pretty, I totally agree with you, and your performance, which is so subtle, and it really, I know that if I went back, I would see an entirely different thing from you, because you're really there, and that's why your performance is so strong. When I saw you 6 weeks ago, I thought, that guy should get the Tony slot. He's so good, and now you're really a factor in the Tony race. It's a wonderful thing to see.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, no, in having that time and having, you know, artists like Terry and Neil and you know, the other three that we're working with, the other three cast members we're working with, being brave like that during previews and really going out there and taking the risk that we took, that helps us develop.
But how can they do that, Michael Riedel, if along comes Michael Riedel?
I just got columns to fill. What can I tell you? Listen, it's all showbiz, kids.
Well, I mean, it turned out to be sort of fun
Yeah.
because ultimately,
You got
You got your name in the paper.
well, I wasn't aiming for that exactly, but what
I should just say, by the way, Terry left a long phone message on my machine, and I just transcribed it and ran it in my column.
Verbatim. Yeah.
verbatim, except that the end was cut off by a beep that I wasn't aware of. You missed the best part.
Oh, no.
So ultimately, what happened that day, because Michael had suggested that young actors might choose this as a monologue because it starts with a sort of a slow and seething energy and then goes to complete and utter outrage. I have no recollection.
I have it right here.
Oh, well,
if you'd like to do some reading.
I'm trying to move on with my life.
You want to try it, Tom, as a young actor?
Well, Tom did do it as.
Oh no, did you really?
The entire cast read it in unison in a Greek chorus fashion to me from the stage.
From the stage.
So that was.
We were not going to let that slide. That's literally, speaking of sharks, that's putting chum in the water with the group of actors that we have. There was no way we were letting
We'll
that.
link it again to the website.
I spoke my mind for better and for worse.
I loved it.
Well, my feeling as being in the press with dealing with theater people is that, we shouldn't have the final word really about anything. And I welcome letters, emails, unhinged rants on my phone machine.
Unhinged.
Now that's a bit editorial.
But I mean, I actually believe that there should be more of a kind of give and take in a debate about the theater, about what you're doing with the critics and the people creating the theater, rather than having this wall that just separates everybody all the time.
Look, at the end of the day, it's theater.
That's right.
Entertainment.
It's the theater of
It's
theater.
the theater. I mean, we're not pushing the red button here. I mean, we should be able to have fun and have a debate back and forth with each other, and we're all in this together. It's
Now,
great.
speaking of pushing the button, it has been announced that people are invited to Twitter and text during performance of your show.
Reasons to be Pretty,
Reasons to be Pretty. And I'd like your comment on that. And I'm to say I'm awfully glad that I saw it before they introduced that policy. But isn't that distracting?
Well,
I can tell you guys aren't really. This wasn't your idea, shall we say?
This decision was made by people higher than my pay grade. But I will say this: strangely, it has worked out. The whole text in the Pretty campaign, the social experiment.
yeah.
It's actually strangely worked out in a beneficial way in that we don't have a lot of cell phones going off on our show.
Because they're busy texting.
Because people are very
busy. They turn them off after they do the thing because they make that second announcement.
Nobody goes into a theater, or hopefully nobody goes into a theater and maliciously keeps their phone on. I think people just forget that it's on, and if you ask them to pay attention to it.
I see them sitting next to me, and I always reprimand them. Because they're sitting there scrolling down. Years ago, I was backstage at Grapes of Wrath. I was an underling in that production working, and one night they came rushing into the stage manager and said, you must do something. Gary Sinise has seen a red light in the balcony.
Yes.
Well, in other words, his focus was so distracted by one red light in the balcony. Now you've got all these little lights going off on the stage. Isn't that a problem?
It's absolutely a problem.
For your actors' concentration?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, then certainly with the advent of the iPhone now, I mean, I can't tell you how many nights we've been out there and you got people recording us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And literally right there.
What is the theory of allowing, the audience to Twitter be interactive when they're watching this play? I don't understand this.
I don't either.
What did the producers say to you when they said, we want to try this?
They said, we're going to try this. And I said, but why would we turn cell phones on before the play? And they said, but we also turned them off. And I said, oh, well, it's your decision, not mine. And that, it went no further than that. I don't really know what all of these new social networking kind of interactive things in order to draw in a younger audience. Oh, they Twitter in that play, so of course I'll buy a ticket. I don't think so. I don't think they do.
Yeah, the whole point of going to the theater, though, is that you immerse yourself completely in another world created by Anil Labute. How can you do that when you've got your Twittering going on because you can respond to, oh, that Tom Sadowski is really cute up there?
Well, I would recommend that you write a rant about it. because I would love nothing more than to just do the play for people. And, you know, this entire theme of aesthetic and beauty and how we see beauty, etc., is not... It never was our main focus in the production. No. It's a play about learning to listen. It's a play about how our words land on each other and about how we change, albeit reluctantly, change ourselves, transform ourselves. So that was a much more rich theme for me. And when the entire thing got taken over by aesthetic and beauty and body parts, etc., I was lost in that. I have no idea.
Interesting. Interesting points. All right, well, listen, it's a terrific play. You will not want to Twitter or use your cell phone when you see it, because you will be absorbed in the language and the performances, including Tom Sadowski's. Tom, congratulations on the Tony nomination.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to take you up on the offer to rant about this, because I think it's a terrible way for the theater to go. Terry Kinney, the director of Reasons to be Pretty at the Lyceum, I think.
Yes.
Lyceum Theater, yeah.
Thanks, you guys are fun.
You got this far, don't up now.
I said... No, what I said was... I know what I said now. This is it. I said this. Yeah, well, maybe Steph hasn't got a face like that girl. Maybe her face is just regular, but I wouldn't trade her for $1 million, you know? Something like that. I was just...
Regular.
Yes, that's all. Regular.
Okay.
See, I never said ugly. I just...
Concentrate on one thing, how to receive her with humility.
The Queen!
There is a great battle on Broadway right now between two titanic figures from history. The play is called Mary Stuart by Schiller. It is here from London. It is about Mary, Queen of Scots, trying to save her head from Queen Elizabeth, who wants to take it off. It is brilliantly acted by two of Britain's leading actresses. We are happy tonight to be joined by Harriet Walter, who plays Queen Elizabeth, and Janet McTeer, who plays Mary, Queen of Scots, returning to Broadway from that wonderful performance you gave in A Doll's House a few years ago, for which you won the Tony Award.
Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations on the success of the play.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Harriet, I'm putting you on the spot first. Why, as Queen Elizabeth, are you demanding this beautiful woman's head?
Well, it's not me so much, it's history and politics behind me. It's there's a certain inevitability about it. The moment Mary crosses the border of England and seeks asylum, she puts Elizabeth and her courtiers in a very tricky position, because she's the focus, even if unwilling necessarily, you know, not necessarily the willing focus of Catholic plots to remove me from the throne.
So you're under threat when she is coming
Absolutely.
To you.
There is actually a situation where the Pope has licensed any Catholic in England to kill me, and he'll go to heaven. I mean, it's basically a bit like the fatwa. So there's a very real danger to my life and my crown. But the interesting thing is that Elizabeth really did not want to cut her head off. She deliberated, she dithered, she found excuses, she shelved the issue, she internally was very, I think, wrung out about the whole thing. She had managed somehow to emerge from a very bloody rule of her older sister and her father, Henry VIII and Mary I. And she recognized that the country was a small, bankrupt country that had been riven by religious war.
Terrible civil war.
And a lot of the Catholic world, which is most of Europe, you know, Protestantism is relatively new, think she's an illegitimate bastard, because her mother was Anne Boleyn, who, you know, Henry divorced the true queen in order to marry, and then beheaded.
But
so her own mother was beheaded when she was 3.
But in this particular play, she has to deal with you.
She has to deal with.
Do you believe, if Mary had gotten power, if she were queen, would she have killed Elizabeth? Is she a real threat to Elizabeth? Personally, not the historical forces, but just her as the way you play her.
No, I don't think she would have beheaded Elizabeth. No, I don't think she would have done that. But she wouldn't have been anywhere near as good a politician. I mean, Elizabeth was, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the greatest politicians our country has ever had. She was extraordinary. But obviously Elizabeth had a really horrific sort of upbringing, and she was put in the Tower at the age of 3, I think, or something, wasn't it? And whereas Mary had a really lovely upbringing in the French court, where she was loved and adored and cherished.
Raised to be the queen, right?
She was a queen from the age of, I don't know, when she was still pooing in a nappy.
It's interesting, the contrast between these two women, because you get the sense in the way it's played and the way it's written that she's not a canny political operator, Mary, at all.
She was.
She was.
Yeah, she really used to be. When she was, you know, they were brought up as politicians. So when she first came to Scotland at the age of 19, she was already widowed. And for 6 years, from 19 to 25, which is incredibly young, that, you know, the severe, extreme Protestants, John Knox and his band in Scotland, who were incredibly clever, incredibly charismatic, and she took them on, and she was great. She stood up and intellectually she fought them, and she was really, really good. And for 6 years, and by the time it all went horribly wrong when her husband was assassinated, up until that moment, it was really touch and go between her and Elizabeth. But, you know, and then she produced an heir, James. Right. So suddenly she was top dog because she had produced a male heir. And there was a moment, a little while, where they were definitely on an even keel, and she looked like she could be winning.
Did they ever meet?
No.
Never. No. They meet in the play, but they never met.
This scene, this famous scene in the serial play, is completely unimagined.
Absolute tosh.
Another thing I thought a great deal about as I watched Mary Stuart was this divide between Catholicism and the Church of England, the Protestant Church, and how, to some extent, it was exploited politically to get power, for the French to try to get power from England or the Spanish, but also the heartfelt, huge sentiments of the difference between these two things. And what's that about?
Well, I think that you really have to, the point that really has to be understood is that Schiller was writing about German Protestantism in 1800, and the play is dealing with the first burst of Protestantism in the 1600s. I mean, the 1500s.
I see.
1500s,
yes.
16th century. As we know, there are many branches to Protestantism.
Yes.
It was Calvinism, Lutheranism, blah, blah, blah. But in Elizabeth's court, it was quite high Anglican.
Episcopal.
It was still, you know, in the play talks about, you know, hating the image and only worshipping the abstract word. Well, I mean, if anybody loved the image, it was Elizabeth I. You know, she almost made herself into the Virgin.
She was a great propagandist.
Yeah. She exploited the love of the Virgin that the Catholics had and translated it into the love of the Virgin Queen.
But the power of the Pope is so great that it feels like you're giving your life for the infallibility of Rome and the Pope.
There is nothing here for me now.
This was also in 15. You know, I mean, it was a much greater sense of God, and you know, where this is sort of slightly pre-science, don't you think?
Yes, I mean, we had to think ourselves back into right. I mean, it's quite for people watching and listening who haven't seen the show. The women are dressed in period costume, and all around us, the men are dressed in modern suits. And part of the result of that is that you realise that men of that ilk have been running the world for all those years, and they're interchangeable, while we are absolutely unique, singular individuals who happened in that period of time, and we're isolated by being women in a men's world. But you know, you do realise that as you're dressed in modern suits, it's very hard to get into the mentality of a world where, you know, beheadings and torture and all those things were absolutely the norm.
Tools in the political toolbox.
And that heaven and hell existed, and, you know, you would be damned forever, and, you know, all those things were part of the 16th century mental setup. And it's quite hard for us to get there as 21st century people, but because you realise that the stakes are so much higher than they would be for us in the liberal Western world.
But still in your country, the Catholics and the Protestants, I mean, we bring in the Irish situation, were up until very recently
but they're not really divides about religious practice. They're divides about political classes and, you know, it's centuries of oppression of the Catholics for political reasons.
But wasn't this to some extent?
Yes, exactly. It is much more about politics than religion, I suppose, except when you think the Pope did run the Western world for, you know, he would not have liked having that power wrested from him.
No. And that which was totally political.
And that was
there's
totally
a whole
political.
part in the Mary's trial scene in the first act where she talks about, you know, the aristocracy having all being so marvellously religious, and they were Protestants, then they were Catholics, then they were Protestants, and then they were Catholics, and now they're Protestants
Just
again.
save their
Whatever.
I'm afraid we're running out of time, but just to jump from historical politics to Broadway politics, we're at the awards season. You guys are giving just terrific performances. Nominations flying around. Jen, you've been through this sort of the Broadway gamut of Tony
nominations.
This is be the first time for you.
Yeah.
Any advice on how to handle all of the hoopla that's coming her way?
I think, I mean, it sounds bizarre to say it, but one has to, and I don't take this in the wrong way, one has to care very little about it, about any outcome. You just have to go, because, you know, we've seen some amazing performances out there, you know, really wonderful performances, and you just think, and, you know, I think Harriet is astonishing performance, and you just have, the great thing about it is that you get to go to all these lunches and fancy schmancy.
Lots of free food coming your way, but
more than that, you get to hang out with all these great actors that, you know, and all these great people involved in these shows that we've, you know, and that is the best bit, and the rest of it you just.
The thing is, I think I'm right in saying it's certainly true of us. We're a pretty uncompetitive industry. The acting fraternity, sorority, or whatever, is pretty uncompetitive because even if you feel competitive occasionally, we have to work together a lot of the time. Now, playwrights can be jealous of one another, or
and producers certainly can be.
But we cannot afford to be like that because we need to cooperate on a daily basis. I would love Phyllida Lloyd to be recognised.
Definitely.
Because I think her work is exceptional. And, you know, even though we've seen some great productions, I think it's hard for anybody out there to know exactly what a great director does, but from the inside, we've worked, between us, we've worked with some directors, and this is something
Is the
else.
fact that, was it her idea to do the suits?
Yeah, to marginalise the guys.
To marginalise the guys. Well, no, to be honest, we sat around at great length because when we first did this play, we did it at the Donmar, which is a studio about the size of this table, and we had about 75 pence to do the entire play, and we had to come up with a really good idea, and we thought about doing it in, you know, all of us in modern dress. That just didn't work because these women they're just not iconic enough in modern dress. So then we thought, well, okay, well, we can afford 2 frocks, but we can't afford...
This is how brilliant decisions are made in the theatre.
And you know what else? The other one was because the rain, which is, you know...
Oh, let's talk about the rain.
We were... that came about because we were sitting... actually, Phyllida and I had come here to see Mamma Mia, and we were sitting with Anthony Ward, our sensational designer, and I was saying, for Christ's sake, I'm 6'9", and I'm built like an Amazonian. Please don't make me run out and smell the flowers.
Because this is the one Mary Stuart's been let out of prison for that.
Sound of Music.
Comes in and you know, and, oh, the flowers, and oh, the air, and oh, it's so marvellous. And, oh. I said, I'm going to laugh myself off the stage. Surely there's something. Wouldn't it be nice if it was really muddy or it was snow, it was pissing it down with rain? It would be really good. And then when Mary came, when Elizabeth came on, it would just be so much like that. It would be great. Well, this is at the Donmar, so of course I never thought it would
They
happen.
had a bucket, right?
A localised cloud
Here we are.
that hovered over the stage.
So Helen said, it's a great idea to drench Janet in this play.
Exactly, and then Anthony said, we're going to do that, and I went, sorry?
And if I'm not mistaken, there is that wonderful contrast that runs through this play, these two women. In the rain, Elizabeth is protected there.
I can control the elements anyway.
Yes.
I mean,
and that is fundamentally what it's about, though. I mean, you are in control in a way. You're impulsive,
right?
But then you realize,
and yet she wins the scene.
And yet she wins the scene. Exactly.
And just one last thing in your curtain call, you hug.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you're very fond of each other, but was there another reason that you were called upon to hug during your
In
curtain call?
London, we're great friends. We've
Yes.
been friends for ages, and you know, everyone thought, do they really hate each other?
I guess it's
And we went, extraordinary.
If you have Richard III and Buckingham or Iago and Othello, the guys going at one another, you don't think, I bet those guys hate one another in real life.
Yeah.
But if you get two women shouting at one another and screaming and wanting to kill one another, somehow
Isn't that
the
something?
audience
Yeah.
goes, oh, they must, you know,
I
it
know.
must
Yes.
be Joan
And
Crawford and Bette Davis, you know.
Yeah.
I have to say, she did do her opening night card was absolutely brilliant. It was the
Whatever happened to Baby Jane? I put my face in Bette Davis's thing, and she's in the wheelchair, and she says, and she has a bubble coming out of her. Saying, "You wouldn't do this to me if I wasn't a helpless victim." And I say,
This is the history as it should be delivered. Dramatic, compelling, and campy. Harriet Walter, Janet McTeer, brilliant performances in Mary Stuart at the Broadhurst Theatre. Thanks a lot for being my guest tonight.
Thank
on
you very
Theatre Talk.
much.
God save my life! Is this the beauty less than dangerous for a man to glimpse? Disaster for any woman to be near? Why is it so talked about? I think I see the reason. To be the god